Hello, and happy Global Ivey Day 2022. My name is Lisa Diamond, and I'm chair of the Ivey Alumni Network. Today, it is my pleasure to introduce the Power Lunch and welcome you to a fireside chat with this year's Ivey Alumni Achievement Award winner, Neil Hetherington, EMBA 2013, and CEO of the Daily Bread Food Bank in Toronto. Neil began his career in project management at Tridel Construction, Canada's largest condominium developer. In 2000, he made a career change by joining Habitat for Humanity in Toronto, at the time as the youngest CEO of a Habitat affiliate in the world. Neil's not-for-profit experience includes 16 years as CEO of Habitat for Humanity in Toronto and then New York City, and 2 years as CEO of Dixon Hall. In today's conversation, you'll hear about what motivated Neil to enter the not-for-profit space, which connections have influenced his success, the challenges that have shaped him, and his perspectives on leading in times of crisis. It's a genuine and inspiring discussion, and I know everyone watching will take away a lesson or two. And as you continue on with your day, I encourage you to reflect on this discussion and think about who in the Ivey Network has influenced you, and to reach out and celebrate those connections. Thank you again for joining us. A hearty congratulations to Neil, and happy Global Ivey Day.
First off, I want to say congratulations, Neil, on winning this year's Ivey Alumni Award. It goes without saying that I am not surprised.
I first met Neil when he became the CEO of Daily Bread Food Bank in Toronto. And I would say what first stood out to me with Neil was his curiosity.
My first time meeting Neil was in my job interview, and one of the first things that really stood out to me about Neil was just that he was a very upbeat, energetic, positive guy.
I've gotten to know Neil pretty closely over the past few years through being on the board at Daily Bread. And I think what really stands out about him compared to anyone else I've worked with is just the amount of passion that he has for helping others.
I first met Neil about 5 years ago when we began to work together at a social service agency in downtown Toronto. And I think what stood out to me first is his capacity.
What stood out to me when I first met Neil was how willing and enthusiastic he was to learn about an industry he had never been in.
He was ready to learn all that he could about food banking across the country, and clearly was passionate about making Daily Bread Food Bank a leader in food banking in Canada.
I also saw someone who had a real openness and an appetite for creativity and for new ideas as well.
Obviously, nonprofit is his passion, but being in food security was new, and it allowed us to really connect and make sure that he knew all the details of the industry he was getting into, and I just love that enthusiasm.
You think, you're the CEO of a big nonprofit, pretty busy guy, and he still has time to do things like taking individual clients out for lunch when he knows it's their birthday. How he finds the time and energy to do that kind of thing, I don't know.
The word I associate most with Neil is mission. Neil's mantra is mission matters most, and he lives that out. Every decision that he makes has the mission of Daily Bread at the center of it. He puts Toronto first, and he puts our clients first.
His decisions are made in service of the work that Daily Bread does to meet people where they are and get them the food that they need, and also to focus on reducing the need for food banks over time. And I very much admire Neil's willingness to be bold and to try new things in service of our critical missions with food banks.
Neil, he gives his entire self to what he does. And that's Neil. I think if you need something, if you need his support, he's there. He's a terrific listener, and he has this ability to just dissect a situation or a challenge and really look for opportunity within that.
He also manages to make everything seem fun and stress-free, which is incredible. We've had a really great opportunity to work together very intimately throughout the pandemic. And, It could have been an incredibly tough time, but somehow he has seen it as a way to be innovative, as a way to connect to the community, and as a way to change the way we do things. And that's an incredible leader, someone who can take an incredibly challenging situation and somehow make lemonade out of it.
In particular, I saw during the pandemic Neil's willingness to really think differently about how he and how Daily Bread Food Bank showed up for this city when everything around us seemed to be uncertain and confusing. But knowing that we needed people, we needed food banks there for people who are food insecure and experiencing food insecurity. It was just so critical, Neil's leadership.
Helping others is really a key philosophy or driving force for what Neil does, and that's something that a lot of people look up to.
It really is remarkable, just the endless passion and endless willingness to give of himself and his time and his resources and his effort and his energy to helping make the world a better place and helping people in need all around us.
Hello, Neil. Thank you for taking the time today to come and sit down with us and talk. I understand you won the Ivey Alumni Achievement Award. Congratulations.
Thanks, JT.
So, just so we can introduce ourselves, I'm JT Badiani. We were class members. And maybe we can talk a little bit about how we first met.
Well, we got the opportunity to meet at Ivey, grads 2012, and over the course of a year and a half doing our executive MBAs, you and I got to walk alongside some pretty amazing classmates and outstanding faculty in running through probably 1,000 different case studies to try to expand our brains. In some cases it worked well, in some cases it didn't work as well.
I remember that first class where we were learning Excel. We were sitting all, kind of looking at each other going, oh my God, what have we got ourselves into, right? What has that path sort of meant for you in those first year and a half of schooling, and then since then?
Since Ivey, the actual program itself was demanding. So each of us had a full-time job, and each of us needed to dedicate some 20 to 30 hours a week towards our MBAs. And they sent us these giant binders. Everything's electronic now, but they sent us these giant binders and basically said, read every one of these binders by next week type of thing.
Yeah.
And I remember being overwhelmed. And I was overwhelmed, but Professor Murray Bryant came in and he said, just trust the process. And that was their common, just trust the process, trust us. And I'm glad that they did that. And I did trust the process, and I trusted my classmates, and I trusted the faculty. And the results were fantastic. It was a year and a half that was demanding, but it was it was kind of like going to the gym. The harder you work, and no pain, no gain. There was definitely a lot of pain, but I think we all gained from it, and I'm deeply grateful for the experience.
I can agree with you. I think we've got some lifelong friends, right? We've gotten to know each other really well, and we've developed sort of a way of communicating through the network and through our classmates, through the professors and how they taught us.
Yeah. I mean, it's a remarkable experience. I think it's our responsibility now, knowing how privileged we are, to be able to pay that forward. So, is that mentorship with Ivey grads? Is that going back to Ivey and speaking and helping to write case studies and that type of thing, or hiring an Ivey grad? And so there is opportunity for us to show our gratitude by giving back to the university.
So, Neil, tell us about where we are. Like, I look at this place, and I've been here, a number of times, but maybe you can describe, where you're at and what Daily Bread does.
Sure. So you're at the Daily Bread Food Bank, and the Daily Bread Food Bank provides food for just under 200 programs all across the city of Toronto. But we're in kind of the heart of Daily Bread right now. We're where food is sorted, and tens of millions of pounds of food come in, need to get sorted, and then go out into the community. It's a large building that houses this production facility, our warehouse, and most importantly, a food bank itself. And every single day, some 150 families come to this particular food bank and receive the food that they need for that week.
How many volunteers come and help out?
So our numbers have declined since COVID, and that's unfortunately restrictions that we've had to place. But some 7,500 volunteers are giving of their day on a annual basis. They're coming out because they fundamentally care about the community.
And do organizations also come in, or is it more individuals?
Yeah, so again, we're going back to pre-COVID, where we had a number of companies who said, we want to do good for our employees by having team building opportunities, and we want to do good for the community. And so they would sign up for our employee volunteer program, EVP, and they would come out and sort food and know that in that day that they were getting to know their colleagues better. They were also making a difference in their neighborhood. So, we've had to reduce the number of corporate groups and school groups that have come out, but I think we're right on the cusp of being able to relaunch that because the need in the city is not subsiding. We are seeing an ever increasing growth in the number of clients. And as the pandemic, hopefully starts to wind down, my hope is that everybody watching this recognizes that people who make use of the food banks are the first to be kicked out of the economy and the last to be brought back into the economy. And so we will not hit a peak of food bank usage for another 2 or even 3 years. And you overlay the employment situation with inflation, and you can understand why there are 5,700 new people every month coming to a food bank for the very first time.
Wow, those are some incredible numbers. Once things open up, they can apply through the website, I assume, and go through the process. Maybe you can describe that, and then we can talk a bit more about other things.
That Martin Luther King Jr. has a great quote saying, "Everybody can be great because everybody can serve." And there is an opportunity to serve at this food bank or food banks all across the country to be able to give back. And we generally ask that people consider donating food or funds. Volunteerism, absolutely, and we will increase the number of open positions. But the thing that everybody can do, it doesn't matter whether you're an Ivey grad or not, everybody can advocate for change. Everybody can send an email or pen a letter to their elected official and say, we need you to implement the poverty reduction strategy so that lineups outside of food banks are decreased, so that affordable housing is built, so that people have pathways to decent employment. These are the things that we fundamentally need if we want to call Canada a just society.
Speaking a little bit about that, there was a report that came out just a while ago, and it harnessed, and we saw a lot of uptake in social media. Maybe you want to just talk a little bit more about that and share with the audience what you saw and what you heard.
Yeah, so for years, Daily Bread has known that there are 3 different things that we need to do in order to reduce the number of people who are in line for a food bank. And that is the development of affordable housing, pathways to decent employment, and the third is income security, changing the rates when it comes to disability and OW. And we knew that those were good things, but we didn't necessarily know the cause and effect of them. We said, okay, if we increase social assistance, that is fundamentally good, but we didn't know what would that mean to the number of individuals who are coming to food banks. And Dr. Kneebone out of the University of Calgary did a study for us and looked at 7 years worth of data and was able to come back and say, if you just added $15, just $15 to somebody's disability check, there would be 54,000 less visits on an annual basis to the Daily Bread Food Bank. And it's remarkable. And so we've been able to say, here's the social policies that are required. Here is the data behind it and the analytics behind it so that you can demonstrate the impact that good, decent social policy will have.
$15, that's a small amount. Have you got any feedback from people in the government or anybody say anything back to you around that?
I will say the Premier took notice of the report. I'm ever hopeful that notice will translate into action, so that the lineups can be reduced outside here.
So Neil, tell us a little bit more about the 2030 project.
So, we have this dual mission, right? Get the food out to people that need it this week. And the second part is around advocacy and changing systems. And so we looked at, what's the fundamental thing that needs to happen, and that's the implementation of a poverty reduction strategy. So all three levels of government have these poverty reduction strategies, and in Canada, we've said we're going to reduce poverty by 50% by 2030. And COVID has obviously thrown an incredible wrench into those plans. But we want to let Canadians know about what our commitments were. And so the 2030 project is an examination of all of the different social policies and social levers that could be enacted, that we know should be enacted across the country to hit that goal of a 50% poverty reduction. And so I'd encourage people to have a listen. We spoke with experts from across the country. It was hosted by Dave Trafford, and Dave asked fantastic questions. And I don't think, no matter how engaged you are with poverty reduction, you'll learn something from it. And it will change, I think, could change your corporate social policy and responsibility initiatives at your corporation. It could change the way that you think, the way that you vote, the way that you talk with your kids. I was thrilled that I was speaking at a school, and grade 10s students had to actually listen to a few episodes, and for their social studies class have to write responses to those episodes. So I'd encourage people to think about it, not food banks, not so much as the immediate food out, which is important, but how do we change the systems that cause people to come to food banks?
You're right, there needs to be systemic change. Question for you, how did the George Floyd situation in the US impact us here?
Well, I think that that situation made us examine some really challenging and sobering statistics that are out there, and the experiences of too many. In Toronto, the black population is 8%. The number of individuals, the percentage of individuals having to make use of food banks is 24%. And those are uncomfortable realities. Why is it that the black population is making use of food banks at 3 times the rate as proportionately? And what systems have we created or allowed to be created or been very comfortable with that have resulted in that disparity? And so, we talk at the food banks that food banking and food security is not a food issue, it's an income issue. And so why has there been that disparity? And it really challenges us to the core. And it has been a constant source of conversation and self-reflection among the leadership team, among our board of directors, as you know, and the volunteers that serve at Daily Bread.
So just gonna take another different slant around social aspects. We've seen housing prices go up. We've seen, obviously rent's gone up, not only in the GTA, but across Canada. What is the impact of shelter and food?
Yeah, so I mean, in my mind, if you get affordable housing done right across the country, then we can shut down as a food bank. And so the government made a decision in the 90s to remove themselves federally from housing in a significant way, and that was downloaded. And we stopped building affordable housing, and that needs to change. I get a bit of hope on the affordable housing portfolio in that we're now talking about it as an issue. I was the CEO of Habitat for Humanity in 2000 in Toronto, and we, as much as we did, we could not get affordable housing in the papers. We couldn't make it an election issue. And now it's a consistent issue. And it's because, regrettably, it's hitting home for far too many Canadians. And so that's the hope that I have there, is that because it's hitting so many, it will cause politicians to take notice and then hopefully take action.
Now, new grads. We got, year is ending. I know my daughter is graduating this year. What advice would you give to somebody new coming into, the workforce?
I think for me, it's always been about the luck of being able to be surrounded by some incredible people. There's a whole lot of this award. I wonder how much is deserved, quite frankly. I have been able to be surrounded by an extraordinary group of people throughout my career. Probably goes back to the first man that hired me at Habitat for Humanity. His name was Nick Volk, and I was CEO at 25. And I didn't deserve that position at all. But he knew that I was deeply passionate about Habitat, and he saw something, I guess, and he gave me a chance. And so I would just, whatever individuals can do, whatever those new grads can do to surround themselves with individuals that have the same values that they've got, and can hopefully guide them towards a career path that is fulfilling for them. When I first went to university, I did not think I was going to ever work in the not-for-profit sector. I wanted to be rich, and I have never seen. I've been extraordinarily fulfilled in working for missions rather than shareholders.
So I'm going to switch gears a little bit. You've gone through two major catastrophic events: COVID, right? And then while you were in the U.S. with Habitat, you had another event, and then your personal endeavors also. You went through, some stress out in the middle of the ocean. Maybe you can talk a little bit about, what has happened to your leadership style during those events, and what has changed over the little while, and how did Ivey, through your schooling, by the way, that was 10 years ago, so our 10th anniversary, what has changed over that time period, and what have you learned?
Well, certainly there have been a number of crises, external events and some self-inflicted ones, I would say, and I think the common theme through it is how you surround yourself with individuals who are able to assist you through that time period. So you mentioned the Atlantic. So for people watching this, unfortunately, sailing across the Atlantic from Whitby, Ontario to Portugal, we lost our vessel, Boundless, and she sank about 1,400 miles off the coast. So real significant crisis, but I was surrounded by great guys, by a great crew who acted calmly. And I think that as leaders, we are always called to row in the opposite direction of where the team's at. And so what I mean by that is when there is crisis here at Daily Bread, because we are struggling with keeping up with the amount of food, that's my job, to be calm during the crisis where the staff are going through. And when things are going really well, it's your job as CEO to stir things up and to not create a crisis, but to at least move things along. And so it becomes very difficult for any executive director, any CEO, knowing that you are always in the opposite rhythm to where the team's at. But I think what has always been an incredible blessing to me has been the people around me, fantastic mentors, the most wonderful leadership team that I've ever worked with in my career is here at Daily Bread. And I feel really privileged every single day to be able to work alongside them.
Fantastic. Since the notice came out that we were going to do this fireside chat, what sort of response have you had? What sort of reception have you had?
Well, I guess people are probably wondering where the fire is. There's no fire. We're sort of between two ferns, which cracked me up when that came out. But the response has been really, really overwhelming. The number of faculty from Ivey that have reached out, the number of members of the community who have seen this. Ivey is an extraordinary place, and there are a lot of individuals who have the capacity to not only help Daily Bread, but help us change the systems causing individuals to have to come to food banks. And so there have been several donations, which has been overwhelming. There have been opportunities to reconnect and opportunities to have volunteers come out. So that all of those things have been very, very positive. Yeah, it has just been a little bit overwhelming, I would say.
Me too. Like, I've received some messages from folks saying, hey, this is fantastic, this is great. Where does Neil want to go 3, 5 years, 10 years from now? Besides crossing the ocean.
Yeah, at some point I want to cross the ocean, but I don't know in terms of my next stage. I know that there is a significant need in the city. I can't see ever wanting to leave the leadership team that I get to work with each day, and so wherever it is, I hope that it's in, and I know that it'll be in a pursuit of social policies that result in justice. The quote that I often use is from a guy by the name of Brian Stevenson, who's a civil rights lawyer down in the United States, and he said the opposite of poverty is not wealth, but justice. And I kind of think about, the incredible privilege that I've had in life, and whether or not I can just make sure that every effort that I direct is directed towards justice. And that justice is directed specifically at poverty reduction. And so I don't know the answer to that. They say if you want to make God laugh, you tell him your plans. And so I don't know what my plans are, but I will do everything that I can to work towards a more just society.
Well, I can see, your staff, how they respect you, how they help you get things done. Any final words before we close off?
Well, I think I owe a debt of gratitude to that staff that you're speaking of, a gratitude to the volunteers that are here every single day, and including the leadership of the board of directors. And as difficult as it is for the clients that are here today and every single day, they are the reason that we are as passionate as we are. And I'm obviously humbled that they need to turn to food charity. They are what fuels us to have a passionate disdain for the systems that are causing them to be here. And so my hope is that we can start to change those systems. And I also have a deep sense of gratitude to Ivey. The 2 years that you and I spent in those classrooms at Spencer and at Ivey were impactful. I learned a great deal. The members of our class are great men and women who are leaders all across the country. And we got taught by a world-renowned faculty. And I have appreciated the relationships with that faculty. And yeah, I guess I would just sum it by saying that I'm deeply grateful for everything that Ivey has ever done for me.
Yeah, me too. I think I look back and say, we learned how to be leaders. We learned about social responsibility. We learned about how to treat others with respect and how to grow, over time, which certainly you have. So thank you for today. I appreciate it for taking the time out.
Thank you, JT.